Alisha. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you for joining me. I know you've had such a busy couple of weeks behind you and you've got so much going on ahead of you as well. So I'm really excited to chat with you today. I know it's going to be quite useful to a lot of our viewers as well. And I'm really looking forward to learning more about you.
Me too. I'm really excited to be here. When you had asked me, I was like, yes, of course, immediately. Like there was just no question. So thank you for
Fabulous.
having me. Thank you for allowing me to be here, and I'm excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, 100%. So if you don't mind, I know it's always easier to introduce yourself, or at least it is for me, than somebody else trying to do the introduction of you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? How long you've been doing it? What do you
Yeah.
love about it? All of those wonderful things.
So, okay, well, my name is Alisha Wedderburn. I am a benefits consultant. I'm a life licensed agent, which means that I can do what I do essentially, and I'm qualified. Um, how long have I been doing this? I've been doing this since 2019. And believe it or not, the opportunity came to me because someone in recruitment was like, what do you think about benefits and retirement? And I immediately blurted out, that sounds boring. And it kind of just fell out of my mouth. I was like, oh, sorry. But at the time it came down to being close to my house. It was in the realm of sales. So it was within the scope of what I
Right.
did. And I thought, okay, like, let's try, let's see, we're open to new things. And the business that I had been working for prior to going on mat leave for my daughter closed down while I was away. So I was looking for a new job. And so this was like a whole new world. And here we are, probably about 4 years later. July makes 4 years. And I cannot tell you how much I have fallen in love with this industry. And that industry that I thought was once boring is now like keeping me up at night because I'm excited. I'm like reading up on new things. Always trying to stay ahead of the curve and ultimately look for the best solutions for my clients and for those who want to work with me. And so here we are. Just I've had an incredible run. I work for an incredible brokerage that I love deeply. And so, between the brokerages, what they stand for, what I stand for, and what I want to bring to the table for my clients, we are so well aligned and are able to do what we do very well.
So important, right? To be aligned with the
100%.
person or the group of individuals that you're
Yeah,
working for, the services that you offer, how you offer them, right? How to even
absolutely.
articulate that product offering as well is incredibly important. I know a lot of our clients are obviously in the real estate industry, and
Yeah,
they go through the same thing of finding the right brokerage, finding the offers that they're
absolutely.
right, and so the alignment there is so important. So you
Yeah.
are technically self-employed, am I correct in saying that?
I'm not self-employed.
You're
No, I
not.
work for a brokerage,
Okay.
and I kind of call it more of like a consulting house
Okay.
because brokers have such a funny stigma to them. So I really am more of like a consultant. It's not just I consult on a wide variety of things. Obviously, benefits being my specialty and where majority of my clients come to me for. But there are other areas that I can specialize in, that I help in, that I'm able to consult on. So yeah, I wouldn't technically say I'm self-employed. Yeah, no.
Okay. Okay. So benefits being your specialty, your area of expertise. I know as an HR consultant and as a recruiter, they're wonderful tools for recruitment and retention, right?
Absolutely.
It's something that we all need. I think the pandemic has highlighted a lot of things
Oh,
for us, right, as well. But I think we've always needed them, really and truly.
yeah.
As you know, you've mentioned you have a daughter. I've got two boys, and
Yeah.
there's always stuff that we need, whether it's medication or
Mhm.
dental work or
Yeah.
whatever, eye checkups, right? That
Yeah.
um, so, can you tell me a little bit about how you articulate to maybe your corporate clients about the importance of using benefits as a tool for recruitment and retention?
So one of the first things that I do is I understand the mission, the values,
Hmm.
what this corporation stands for,
Right.
right? Because that becomes the heart and sort of like the nucleus around what we do and why we do what we do when it comes to the benefits, right? And a lot of previously, a lot of people looked at benefits as like this thing that we have. It was just great. And, it's cool, but they weren't really allowing it to work for them. Now, today, and let me just clarify too, benefits fall under the top three expenses for a business. Okay. And I keep telling my clients and my, the prospects and those who I work with, I say, it is too much for you to not make it work for you.
You're absolutely right.
It is too much for you to not make it work for you. There must be a return on investment for you somehow. So now what we're doing, especially, coming out of this pandemic that wreaked havoc on a lot of businesses. And, a lot of them, some of them were like, benefits got to go, or we got to cut things down because it's just too heavy of a line item for us. And so now what I do is I'm showing them, and this is where the consulting piece comes in, is I'm showing them where they're, what they stand for and what that looks like and how the benefits can work for them. And I'm kind of drawing that bridge between the two, because sometimes the bridge wasn't there. We knew there's point A, we knew there's point B, but how do we get there? And so now it really is for me about drawing that bridge and drawing the map about why these two are so connected and so important. And ultimately, you have to look at benchmarking, right? Look at what's happening in the industry, look at the changes, and look at what people ultimately need and want, right? And so that's how we use it as a tool to attract, retain, and, make sure it works for you, because we want to give people ultimately what they want. It's got to work within, for the business as well. But if you don't have what's desirable for those who you're looking to hire, it doesn't work for you. So understanding all those facets are kind of how I put together the picture for corporate clients.
Right. Absolutely. And I mean, you can, I think with clients too, or with candidates for that matter, you can sort of appeal to both sides. There's the human component of, what does it take for you to retain, not just financially, but to retain. How much time and money does it take for you to retain the person that you're looking to have or now looking to replace, right? How much of your time is going to be consumed by training and onboarding this individual, only to have them potentially leave 6 months from now because they're not getting what they need, right? That's an incredible amount of effort and energy that you need to spend as a manager, right? And then there's the financial piece, of course. There's the cost of recruitment. There's a cost of training and onboarding. That's all very, very relevant. So we can break it down and say, it could cost you, let's say $2,000 per person a year to introduce benefits, right? But it would cost you $16,000 a year to have to replace them every year. So, I mean, tit for tat, it's definitely very much a needed service. And as a recruiter, that is something that many candidates and very many applicants are asking about, because their spouse might be self-employed, or they might not have the insurance, right? Or it's something that they're just quite used to having, right? You mentioned earlier, it's something that we've taken for granted. I feel like a lot of the times, I know myself working corporate for so many, decades at this point, right? It's something that I just had, and I never actually really took full advantage of, right? I felt like I was doing something wrong by, maxing out my chiropractor or my massage or whatever the case may be. And I mean, the employer is paying for it one way or the other, right? So you should not take advantage. I don't want to put any sort of negative connotations on that, but you should definitely be using it, right?
Absolutely. So just to speak on that, one of the things that I always like to talk about is having happy, healthy, and productive employees, right? Those three key things for me are really the foundation of benefits and how they need to serve you. So are your employees happy? So let's look at their mental health. Are they able to show up with a clear and sound mind, able to do what is needed of them and what is necessary for the business to move forward, and ultimately, have that employee show up in as their best self, right? Healthy. If our employees are not healthy, that is time off. That is, you're looking at short-term disability, you're looking at long-term disability, you're looking at time off where, things that are necessary and needed to get done can't get done because the employee who needs to isn't well. And so we look at why having, drug plans are important. We look at why having plans that allow employees to get what they need so they can show up as their best self. happy, healthy, and productive. And ultimately, you want an employee who comes in ready to work. Because a lot of times, I mean, life happens, right? Like we're all human, and there is that human element of it, and we cannot discount that, right? But you also want employees who are able to show up and be ready and willing to work. And that is physically, that is financially. Think about how often when we are in a financial bind, whether it be like in our 20s, decades ago, or whether it's now, if you're financially not sound and you're not okay, and your personal life financially is not healthy, you can't focus, because all you're thinking about is the next dollar. Where is it going to come from? How am I going to get it? What bill is piling up, right? And you really want your employees to be able to show up to work. And part of allowing and having your employees show up is providing a way for them to do that. And that is a lot through benefits, right? Benefits will help that. Benefits will help your employees get access to the mental health support that they need. There are so many tools and so many different ways that they can access mental health support. And, whether it be through healthcare spending accounts that your company might offer, whether it be through the benefit plan, whether it be through programs that your consulting house or brokerage might offer you, we need it, right? And especially coming out of something like a pandemic where it just wreaked havoc on so many of us, who were healthy, ready to go, but like we just needed support, right? And so it more than ever, just using the benefits as a tool to, create a space where your employees can get what they ultimately need to be their best self and show up as their best self.
It's interesting. You touched on so many really important things here. I was having a conversation the other day with a former colleague, and we're talking about benefits. And he said that his company didn't provide, his new company, he had just been recently employed with this company. He's been on the job hunt for quite some time, which obviously wreaked havoc on his family finances. And he was the breadwinner, still is now. But, during the time that he was looking, he didn't have any coverage. His wife is she's a stay-at-home mom. And so there's no benefits there. There's no benefits for their children. And so as soon as he had gotten his new work opportunity, they started to book their regular appointments and things like that for kids, for the checkups, for dental, for things like that. One of the things he said to me is, I need new glasses. My glasses have been scratched. Unfortunately, my company doesn't offer the vision benefits, right? And they don't have a healthcare spending account, which is, and I know glasses, can cost $400, $500, $600 depending on your prescription and the frames, right? That alone is already saying to him that he needs to pull back and wear the old glasses that he had, right? Because he simply can't justify spending that much money out of pocket, right? So, having benefits is wonderful, but having benefits that actually fit the needs of the employees. And as you can imagine, that's causing tension in their finances, which causes tension in their marriage, right? We've all been, financial stress doesn't just impact you, it impacts everybody in your household, right? And so super important to not just offer sort of a blanket type benefits to everybody, but really try to gear. And employee surveys are really great for that as well, right?
I'm a huge advocate for employee surveys. One of the first things when I'm working with new clients or, prospects and trying to earn business and work with them on what their current plan is when they're having a deeper look at it is I say, let's do a survey. Nothing allows you to feel more valued, more seen, more heard and understood than saying your input matters. So when companies and when corporate says, listen, I want to hear from you, doesn't guarantee that they're going to take everything that you want and you desire, but at least you have the ability. It's like voting. It's at least your voice will be heard, right? You've given your input. What happens after that is kind of out of your hands, but you've done your part. And what you want to be able to do in this circumstance is say, like, I've done my part. I've given my input. Hopefully they hear me. Hopefully there's enough of us who need and want the same things. And then another thing that you want to look at is the demographics. Right? You're looking at generations, you're looking at the different demographics where people are in their life cycle. There's different, demographics and different generations and life cycles need different things, right? So when you look into all those things and you factor all those different elements, you can pull together a plan that will resonate and resound well with who needs it. Because you're right, there is nothing worse than having this blanket plan that just is almost like, okay, we have a benefit plan. here you go,
Right.
right? You need something that works for you, that matters to the people. A lot of times now when I'm, inquiring with different prospects and different clients is, do you have a group retirement plan? People want to know that financially they'll be taken care of. We're no longer in the day and age where we have these robust pension plans,
You're absolutely right. I didn't
like
even
that
think
is,
about that.
yeah, like it sucks, but companies are just not offering that anymore. So now, we're looking at group retirement. Are you matching? Are you just providing a venue where they can save automatically? Are you making it easy for them? And so I have a lot of my clients and a lot of my prospects who I'm working with looking into that. And we're kind of doing tandem. We're looking at benefits, but we're also looking at group retirement because you want to know that your employees can have what's important to them. And now financially and making sure that they're good going forward, that's important to a lot of them.
That's a really great point. You're right. Looking at demographics and making sure that sort of that age cycle is meeting the expectations.
Absolutely.
Because what mattered to me in my 20s is
Right.
irrelevant to what matters to me in my 30s and going into my 40s and all of that as well, right?
Yeah.
Like RSPs are extremely important, and so
Absolutely. And with things getting, with the current state of the economy and how, look at groceries, look at pricing, look at how everything is just astronomical. You want to know, like, if you're not, planning properly, you just might not have enough for retirement. You're not thinking about tomorrow because we're just so focused on today, right? We've got to make it through this, this economy right now, right? And that can be hard for a lot of people if you're not making a ton of money with the extra disposable income where you can start thinking about tomorrow, because nowadays that feels like a luxury for a lot of people. Being able to think about tomorrow and have the finances for tomorrow is a luxury right now, with the current state of the economy. And so really providing a way for our employees to, again, take off their plate. Listen, we're going to either match or we're going to just provide a venue and an avenue for you to save for tomorrow. Sometimes that's enough. Matching is incredible. It's great. Some companies can afford it. Some companies can't. That's okay. But again, just being able to, going back to your original statement, taking the input of those who this is going to directly affect and, ensuring that they have what they need ultimately, and ensuring that they, it matters to them and it's going to be useful for them. Because if it's not, you're spending too much money to have it not work for you. So when I see low usage on a plan, it tells me two things. One, that they're not educated on what the plan and what they have available, or two, that it doesn't, they don't need what is currently being offered. And that those are two red flags for me where I'm like, we have to look into this, because a good plan is used moderately, is used well. But when it's not being used, you want to think, okay, what is it? And how do I get them to use it ultimately?
Yeah, no, absolutely. As you know, and we've talked about this before, a lot of my clients are in the real estate industry.
Yeah.
They're either independent brokers, or they own brokerages, or they lead teams. So very sort of lean businesses with regards to how they operate. And of course, most people within it are self-employed.
Right.
You've mentioned something to me that I haven't heard before, and that you actually offer a plan that's specifically geared towards real estate individuals. I'm so curious to hear a little bit about that, because I think, me less so than everybody else that watches, I think will be really excited about this.
Absolutely. So I have an association plan under my brokerage house. I manage it, and really it's geared towards real estate agents. And so what it does is it just allows, realtors, real estate agents. I believe we have a couple mortgage brokers and mortgage agents in there as well. But we offer extremely competitive pricing, and it's, again, a way for you to get access for these self-employed individuals who work really hard. A lot of them are fully self-employed. They're not working by day, the 9 to 5, and then by night real estate. They are real estate 20, all throughout the day. And so I believe firmly that benefits need to be accessible. And so we've created this association plan where realtors and the industry, those alike, can have access ultimately, right? And again, compared to some of the other plans, like that are out there, ours is quite competitive in pricing, which is also one of the great benefits. So just a side note, if anyone has any interest in that, please feel free to reach out to me. We can certainly go through things. I can provide an individualized quote for you. And that's also the great thing, is that I can provide an individualized quote. This isn't,
Right.
Something where you're a number. You get to be, Bob, Jim, Sally, an individual person.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's very specific sort of job related risks that go along with being a real estate agent, right? Sometimes you run into people's dogs. Sometimes you can slip on a porch. You're going into people's houses. It's late at night, not late at night, but it's, it's
sometimes
dark,
it is late
right?
at night. Yeah.
And sometimes it is later at night for sure, because they may be out of town and they ask you to stop in and, check on the lights or make sure that none of the appliances are on or stuff like that, right? So how do you provide coverage for those specific risks that are common to this industry and, very few other industries?
That's a good question. Interesting. Good question for that. I don't know that I'm looking at risk. Like, you look at risk specific, and that's kind of like where the insurance company comes in and they assess what the risks are for this particular industry, and they assess rates based on the different risks that are associated with different industries. So that's where you kind of have what, they kind of make assessment based on what the risks are and how that pans out financially. And kind of that's where the pricing factor comes in. But ultimately, that's where it kind of falls on the insurance company, where like they assess that risk. They look at what the different risks based on different industries. And I'm sure, as everyone knows or may not know, but like sometimes the insurance companies are like, too high of a risk. We're not gonna, quote on this. We're not gonna, kind of put our bid in for this, right? Because the risk is too high, or, we've got too many people in this pool of risk and we don't want to unbalance the scales. So it really does kind of based on what the insurance company deems as, a risk they're willing to take on versus a risk they're not willing to take on.
Interesting. Okay, sounds good. That's very interesting. And yes, of course, every company functions slightly different, and they have different portfolios, right? So they're just balancing their odds, I guess.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Can you provide some guidance on sort of how much coverage is appropriate for my small business or a real estate brokerage, for example, that has, 100 agents? And again, what are some of the tools that we're using to assess what the appropriate coverage is?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest tools I'm going to use first and foremost is benchmarking, right? You're going to want to test against the industry and find out where the happy medium, where I guess what your baseline is really, right? What is everyone else offering? Where do I fit in? So that's a really great place to start. And that's kind of, you use that as like your ground zero there, right? At the very least, you want to offer this. And then from there, you look at, your brokerage. Maybe you've got a really young brokerage and you've got young, they're looking, they're just starting out and they don't need all the thrills and frills. And then you say, okay, they probably want a little bit more on the paramedical side, which would be like your massage, your chiro, your physio, right? And so you might want to kind of beef up those benefits. Or, you have someone on your, an older, more established brokerage, and then you're like, okay, well, life insurance is more important. Long-term disability is more important for them. Certain things become more important. So you're going to want to look at the scope of both the benchmarking for the industry and also who is within the brokerage and what is important to them. And then, like we said, that is also where you get a little bit of the surveying and where that becomes important, because you can have their say on what's important to them, because sometimes the demographics won't speak to, sometimes you do have a younger demographic and they're like, well, long-term disability is really important to me. And you're like, oh, well, that's not the norm, right? So allowing those who are going to use it to have their say and to tell you ultimately what's important to them is a really, really great factor in kind of creating a plan that's going to work for everybody, essentially. And then you want to look within your budget too, right? What do you have to spend, right, on this plan, right? What do you have to invest in it? Because you're not spending money when it comes to benefits. It's really an investment, and you have to look at it as such, right? You have to look at it as like, I'm not just putting it out there and I'm never going to see it again. Okay, if you play smart and if you are, do it well, and this is where someone like myself, a consultant, a broker, will come in and work with you and should help you make it work for you, right? Because this is what we do ultimately. And so once you are able to look at those different facets, and we can provide different tools for you to look at and price things out for you and provide you with quotes, from there you can kind of establish.
That's amazing, and I love that very, very tailored, customized approach. I think that's something that's really important in business.
Absolutely.
And you talked about, earlier you said, we're earning someone's business. I think that's incredible.
Absolutely.
It's a smart way of looking at it as well. I think it's the only way of looking at it, to be completely honest.
100%. It's an absolute, first of all, it's a privilege when someone wants to work with me. I don't take that lightly in the least bit, because there are so many people who do. It's like with real estate. Like, let's just throw it back into the industry.
Exactly.
Look how many realtors there are. When you have someone who's like, I want you to represent me. I want you to help me with my biggest investment that you will likely make in your lifetime, is buying a property, right? And so ultimately, as being a huge investment for a company, someone choosing me and saying, Alisha, I want to work with you. I trust you enough. I don't take it very lightly. And I also work on the approach that, like, I'm not just your consultant and I'm this detached figure. I'm really an extension of your team. Okay. So once I work with you and we decide we want to engage in this working relationship, I am a part of your team now. I am not just working for you. I'm working with you. I am trying to make every aspect of the benefit world and all that comes with it seamless, easy. I want to take that off your plate, because it is just too big of a thing and too big of an area where it can be confusing. It can be a lot. And even though HR directors, VPs, they're brilliant minds, but they juggle so many things. And and every time I'm like, how do I make your life easier? How? What can I bring to the table that you don't already have? And that's, I find often, where I can bring a lot of value, and more importantly, trust. I need you to trust me, and I need you to understand that, like, I'm working for you and I've got your back and I'm looking at your best interest, and so it is absolutely a privilege. It's, more often than not, an honor. I work with some brilliant minds in the HR space who I am floored and awed by every single day. And I think that every day, that's kind of what wakes me up in the morning, is like meeting incredible people. And even if I don't work with, you, I'm still like, I have to hold so much respect for these people who are leading the charge, who did so much for employees and people during the pandemic, who, went to the front of the battlefield and just like had to take a lot of like what was coming at them, right? Like, it's just, you guys in the HR space are just brilliant. And I think working with a lot of brilliant men and women in that space is really where I get excited by, because I'm like, what can I do for you guys? How can I ultimately serve you guys?
I think for us too, it's the same thing. I mean, you know that I'm self-employed as well, and I have, my consulting company. And so, I look at things very similarly. I think it's always a privilege to work with clients, and I love working with like-minded people who are here to help, right? They're here to support, to grow, to develop a long-term relationship. Because just like for me, for you, it's not a one and done, sign the contract, I'm out, bye, right? It's a continuous relationship of educating about, the different perks and the benefits of benefits, right? And then tweaking things as you go, and sort of being that contact, being the face of that company that that's consistently serving the people. So I definitely agree. You mentioned earlier about budgets, right? Budgets have to obviously make sense for the employer in order to be offering benefits. Do benefits have to be paid solely 100% by the employer?
No, and oftentimes they're not. The minimum an employer has to pay is 50%. Okay. But there is something called premium sharing, where employees do pay a portion of the premium. It is always of great value when the employee doesn't have to pay, and it always is, a really good look for companies when they don't ask for premium sharing, but it happens, and and that's okay. And so employees don't have to pay 100%, but they at least have to pay 50%. An employer can't ask the employees to pay 70 and they pay 30.
Right.
That's not a thing.
I know I've seen it the other way around, where the employee paid either, I think, 30% or 20% of the total cost of the package, which made sense because I think it amounted to something like $40 a month, which isn't going to break the bank for anyone.
Sure.
But it also made them invested in using the benefits as well, right? Because we didn't want to pay for benefits that somebody wasn't using. So this way it sort of, I think, incentivized them in a sense. It also obviously saved some costs for the employer as well. It was new. We were new to providing benefits to employees, and so it was sort of a more cautious way of jumping in. It's putting our toes in the pool, right?
Without jumping in,
ready to jump in, but we're trying. We're really testing the waters here. So it was an option, and it wasn't as expensive. Again, even for, I think it was at the time a team of about 15 people, cost wise, after a year when we did the analysis, the benefits of paying for those still outweigh any sort of expenses that we would have incurred if we had to recruit and over and over for similar roles, which is what we've had to do in the past, because we were in an area where everybody was offering benefits, and that was one of the things that people really wanted, especially young families, right, with kids. That there's expenses add up, like hospital trips and whatever else that they have to do, medications, right? So
I know that all too well. Like I've got a 4-year-old, right? And between when she was in daycare, she needed like this nasal spray for her sinuses and what have you, because daycares are germ tested, always had something. So young families need the help that benefits provide. And, it's great when you have both, two, a household with two where, mom and dad, or, two parents where they can both provide benefits. But if not, even having one family provide benefits is still better than nothing. I've also worked for places where they didn't have benefits, and it's paying out of pocket can get so expensive.
Absolutely.
And it, like we talked before about the financial burden of like coming out of pocket and who and how it affects everything. Like, you're tiptoeing around things and you're trying to subtract and add your budget line just to be able to get the medicine that you might need, that in some cases are life-saving, right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. And if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, if you do have dependents living in the household, if one of the spouses, so for example, I'm self-employed, I do not carry an insurance, but my husband does, his company by law has to provide insurance for the dependents as well.
Your husband will absolutely be able to have his dependents and your children or child on his benefit plan. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know for a lot of people, they're sort of trying to weigh out the pros and the cons of having insurance versus not having insurance, or maybe just having some sort of a spending account or a monthly allowance for their employees if they have any sort of medical needs. Do you have, or can you advise on any sort of tools that any broker owner or a team leader in the real estate space, or any other small business for that matter, can have in order to maybe assess some of the risks that they might run into as a result of not carrying insurance, or just workplace risks that they may need to assess in order to understand what insurance plan would best benefit them?
So I feel like there's two questions in there. Now, the first question, by not, like what the risk is by not having benefits. Well, there's the huge financial risk, right? If the salary that they're getting cannot cover what they need for their life in terms of benefits, so whether that's drugs, whether that is like mental health support. I've worked with someone and she had an autistic son, and she needed a variety of different therapies and a variety of different specialists. And, one benefit company, she's trying to see like what benefit company is going to be able to provide the most for me, because coming out of pocket is becoming very expensive. Right. And I want to say maybe she was even in the real estate world as well. And so, you stand a chance of potentially losing a really great employee just simply because what they need for their family and for their life and for their day-to-day, we're just not getting, right? So you do stand that chance. And then you look at the financial cost behind that. You look at the labor cost behind that. You look at, all the different the productivity and the all the different facets, right? So there is that element. And having a healthcare spending account, what's great about that is that it's a set price, right? You're going to pay for the amount that you want to give your employees. So let's say it's $1,000 you want to give your employees, just a round off number, right? And then you pay for the admin fee for that, and then that's it, right? And off they go. They can use it for anything that CRA can underwrite. And so ultimately, a lot of companies now are introducing healthcare spending accounts, and they might, remove certain facets of the traditional benefit plan and then introduce a healthcare spending account. So I think I was recently connecting with someone who didn't have a dental plan, but they had a healthcare spending account.
Right.
And, instead of having a dental plan, you could use your healthcare spending on the dental, right? And so there is that element there where, we're getting a little bit more creative in the way we provide benefits, right? And in the way we look at what a benefit plan holds, how we use them, how we structure them. And so that's becoming fun and challenging for me. Like some days I'm like, I have to literally sit there and put my thinking hat on. And I'm like, okay, what is going to work for this company? What are their needs and what do we have available for them, right? And you've got to start pulling things out of hats and different elements, and you're like giving them different tools. And so the risk of not staying kind of innovative becomes, the risk of also losing people and going where there is innovation, going where there is
flexibility, I guess, right?
Options, choices, flexibility, exactly.
And I think it's very relevant, not just to your industry, but to all industries, right? HR, real estate. I think we have to stay on top of, ahead of the curve, really, is what it ends up being. We have to use and utilize technology and all of the different features and be very adaptive to the ever-changing world that is business, that is planet Earth, really, right?
Absolutely.
COVID being sort of a lesson for sure, I think, for a lot of us in how to quickly pivot if you want to stay relevant and if you want to survive, really.
Absolutely. I mean, the amount of adapting that was needed and that had to be done, like, so my position as a benefit consultant, I was considered an essential service. So I worked right through the pandemic.
Okay.
Right. And so, in doing that and talking with my clients, we were looking at how do we adjust. I mean, they were going from plans with people, like 100 people on it, to now down to a core group of 30. So now what does this mean for them? How do we tailor them so that they can get what they need, but we also are not overfunding the plan right now as we need it? And here's the thing, you can, move and groove and change as needed, right? Because ultimately companies, some days you go into these periods of where you're hiring and you are just growing. And then there's periods like the pandemic where then you've got to pull back, a little bit. And now our employee count is decreasing, right? So you just want someone who's flexible, who can move with you, who can preempt what's coming,
right?
Stay kind of one head of the curve. I am constantly having my head in the articles, what's happening, what are the changes, what are the trends, what's going on, because again, part of the value that I bring is I'm going to come to you and say, hey, here's what's happening. Let's get ahead of this, versus, my client coming to me being like, this is happening. Where do we fall? I don't want them to have to come to me and be like, what's happening? I want to be able to go to them and say, hey, here is what's going on, and here's how we're going to navigate it. Does this work for you? Let's look at what this option is. Let's look at what that option is. But really having someone who I'm constantly having my ear to the ground. I'm constantly connecting with industry peers. I'm constantly making sure that I am one step ahead, because that is my role. And I just would feel wildly embarrassed if someone's brought something to me and I'm like, oh, well, I don't know. Let me look into that for you. I'm like, I want to be the first and keep my clients in the know. So
wonderful. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today. I really hope that this is helpful to so many. And I'll definitely post the information on where people can find you as well.
Absolutely, please.
To explore a partnership with you and take you on as a part of their extended team.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I think that what you're doing and kind of bringing some of the pros and some of the knowledge to you know, the industry is so important. So, I mean, huge kudos to you, Kate, and thank you so much for bringing me on your show. It has been such a pleasure talking with you, and yeah, I'm always here to talk benefits whenever needed.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm sure it's not the last time you and I are going to be talking.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Alisha. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye for now.